Hi all, welcome to this Marquee Matchups for the 29th of September. Apologies for not actually showing routes in advance or anything, just due to times with like holidays and so forth. Just not had the chance to sit down and build squads, so just try to do it in the simple form this week. Might get back to a bit more normality for Marquee Matchups for like next week and whatnot. But hopefully you still find this useful, so if you're welcome, sub to the channel if you're new, follow me on Twitter at GTheLegend. All links down below for both the channel and social media links as always. Comment down below what you think will make Marquee Matchups for this week. There is a lot of games to cover, but at the same time we're going to obviously like break them all down and all that kind of stuff. And just give our general thoughts, because Marquee Matchups usually at the start is hit and miss for quite a few people, because we generally don't know what to expect, and at the same time you're trying to factor in what they will actually go with. Like, they generally make it cheap, it's just a case of like how cheap and also like what routes really. But in terms of this week for Marquee Matchups, the main games that I have seen and gone over, because it's back to league this week, we have Arsenal versus Spurs, Manchester City versus Manchester United, Inter Roma, Hearts, Rangers, Sevilla, Atletico, Besiktas Fenerbahce, Malmo versus Hammarby, St Etienne v Grenoble. Yes, I am going everywhere. Anyone that remembers the old days of Marquee Matchups, I have gone to town with this, folks. You've got Grasshoppers v Zurich, Michelin v Viborg, Standard Liège v Serang, Shamrock Rovers v UCD. Now, Bohemians also have UCD in the same game window. Lech Poznan v Legia Warsaw, San Jose Earthquakes versus LA Galaxy, MK Dons v Peterborough, and Leicester versus Nottingham Forest is the last game to factor from the big leagues. Then you've also got Accrington v Morecambe, Exeter Bristol Rovers, and Modena versus Regina. So if you've done your maths there, there's a lot of games, and honestly, if you're doing like proper Marquee Matchup predictions, this is pretty much what you're going to get. And I mean like this is me covering everything, every nook and cranny, because full well we know that they're going to do 4 games that we should expect, quite academically. It's just a case of what takes the small game like mantle for the week. That is what it comes down to, and then it becomes a case of what other 3 games do they take for, like, say, the big ones. Because when you break it all down, deep down, realistically, the one that should be there will be Arsenal, Spurs, Man City v Man United. That prem game should be a lock. It's a case of which one they will go for. Second game, Besiktas v Fenerbahce, should be another given. Looking at all the games that are available, so that way in theory you've got 2 half decent games. Inter v Roma or Sevilla Atletico will probably be one of the third games. The small game option, if I was to be realistically honest, I would say could be Lech Poznan Legia Warsaw, because it's one of the biggest games in Poland. But at the same time, like Malmo Hammarby, the Swedish league's not far away from finishing. Michelin v Viborg is one that you wouldn't necessarily assume. They may do the Irish league for the same reason as we mentioned with the Swedish one. But with so many games to kind of like basically account for, it's really hard. It's legit trying to find what 4 they will nab. Like, and you can sit down and say to yourself, oh, how do I then, it's like you then say to yourself, well, how do I then prepare for like these Marquee Matchups these days? And that is part of the problem when I'm mentioning that many games, because you then do say to yourself, well, it's like the international break had its challenges because you only needed like 1 player from Denmark and France, for example, when we had that one, but it needed 3 silvers, max 6 nations, 1 rare, 14 chem points. It was relatively cheap to do only because of how everything was set up. You could literally do it as a bronze team with just free silvers. You literally could just go either the Alka Superliga or the second tier in France, and you were basically set. That was the way you could do it, and it was pretty stress free. With when you get into like the bigger ones, even still, where it's just a gold squad, it could legitimately should be relatively cheap to do, even if it's like one player from each club. Like the only way they're going to really boost them up is if the requirements. I don't expect them to suddenly hike them up to a point where it's a challenge to do. Like, they know at the start of the game they need to make it relatively cheap. The pack return's not exactly the greatest, so it's like you see yourself for a coin spend for pack return. It's just, in essence, it's all about making it in essence affordable and justifiable at the same time. If you really wanted to, my best advice is, from all the games I've mentioned, I'll maybe put the list in the description, like I used to do. I'll see. Is basically you would pick 6 games, you pick 4 that you're comfortable with, and then you pick 2 fallbacks. So maybe for Arsenal, Spurs, Man City, Man United, and even Leicester, Nottingham Forest, you take the Prem teams. You maybe just take, say, realistically 2 players. So maybe from like Arsenal and Spurs, you're maybe looking at like Langley, you're looking at Holding, highest rated Smith Rowe from an Arsenal perspective. Like, you're generally just looking around like these teams, who's like 350, who's 400 coins, just nab them. Like Arsenal, Spurs, Man City, Man United. And Roma do the same. Darmian's probably going to be relatively cheap. I think who else will be relatively cheap within the team. He's pretty much like the most common one you're going to find. But D'Ambrosio probably, if he's still there these days and whatnot. Roma, you're just generally trying to look at like your Karsdorps and Mancini, and who else do you kind of try and consider? But you just dodge around. Besiktas Fenerbahce, it's maybe more tailored to the league, but you'd still buy one from each team, because that way then you're covering your back with Superliga, but you're also covering the team element as well. As I say, for like Lech Poznan, Legia Warsaw, you're either going to cover your. My best advice would be get a Polish player from the league that plays for both teams. So you get a Polish player from Lech Poznan, you get a Polish player from Legia Warsaw. You're covering your back with Extra Lazar, you're covering your back with the team, and you're covering your back with a nation. Case to do, because that's sometimes what they'll do with the smaller ones. They'll either try and do league, player, like league, nation, or the club. If you've got one that covers all 3, you're basically set. That's the easiest way around it always, regardless if it's like Arsenal, Spurs, all the way down to like a League 2 game. But as I said, it's just wait and see in terms of what to expect. I think because this is the first domestic one, it then will give us an idea of what to expect for like next week's ones, because we'll be able to shape it a little bit better, as it were. But this week's probably a little bit of thought process is kind of needed to an extent on who do we expect, because last week was obviously international break, we're kind of on the money, but we'll see what this week's brings. So let me know, folks, as I said, for like your marquee matchups. If you're investing, what are you primarily investing in? If you have been doing them, what did you get in your packs? If you've been saving them, all that kind of good stuff. So have a good one, folks. Take it easy, all. As I said, let me know like what, if you want any suggestions on like what thoughts I should take on the format as well, because I'd like to show the squad examples as well, just to give people an idea of what kind of fits requirements and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, it can be hard to nail it down, as it were. But we'll get there in the end, again with consistency with the format. But have a good one, folks. Take it easy, and I will catch you all later.